All right, by the end of this video, you are going to learn exactly how you can scrape the ads library on a scheduled interval and automatically add leads into your cold email campaign. So imagine going through the ad library where you can see every single business that is running ads. This one specifically is targeting people running teeth whitening ads, so maybe dental offices. We'll using that, scraping it, automatically adding these leads into a Google Sheet, which is our database, and scraping that data and then putting it into Instantly AI. And we're doing that every single week, sort of like a drip campaign, reaching out, prospecting to new particular B2B clients to sell our services to. So in my case, I sell AI services, AI chatbots, AI voice bots to these companies. And so I've just chose for demonstration purposes to target teeth whitening companies or dental companies that offer teeth whitening to provide AI services too. So here is sort of the roadmap. I'm going to show you exactly how to do all of this. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Justin, and I like to create content just like this, showing you how I solve problems in my business. Now, everything I cover here in this video will be available for download, but this time it is in the premium school community. Now, if you come in here to our school community, you'll see inside of the premium school community, we have a bunch of classroom resources, but this is going to have its own section here where you'll be able to download the N8N workflow that we create, which is right over here. I'll show you the Instantly template. I'll give you the link so you can just import the Instantly cold email template that I have provided inside of here, and then also give you any other resources that we cover. Now, this is a paid community resource, so the premium community is not free. At the time of recording, it's $57 a month or $390 a year. Prices will go up as time goes on, but I understand that not everybody can afford it, or they're at the right point in their life to invest in something like a premium community. And so I'm going to show you how to do everything for free. So you can just follow along this entire tutorial, copy what I'm doing, and you will have the same exact system. So enough of that. Here is the overview. So we're going to scrape the meta ads library. If you don't know what the meta ads library is, it is essentially Facebook's obligation to post publicly what ads are being run on their platform, which is not necessarily meant for people to go and prospect to those people, but dual purpose. We're using it to prospect to people because people or businesses who are running ads may have a need for our AI lead qualification and lead booking system. I want to target people who are investing in ads already. The ad library is a great place to do that. Next thing we're going to do here is we're just going to store unique data inside of Google Maps. In Google Sheets. And so the reason why I say unique data is because we don't want to keep adding the same data to the database. We want to have some checks in there, and I'll show you how to do that just to make sure that, yeah, we're probably going to scrape similar data, but if there's a new company, we want to add new companies. And then we're going to determine if we already have their contact info. If we already have their contact info, we're not going to scrape their Facebook page for more contact info. Then we are actually not going to do a personalized icebreaker. I am removing that from here. I'll show you where there's opportunity to do that in the tutorial. However, I ran a campaign without a personalized icebreaker for auto detailing companies. I only sent 326 emails, I believe. Let me check the stats over here. Let me pull it up in here. 1 second. I sent 362, dyslexia, 13 replied, 10 opportunities were interested, 6.8% reply rate, but I got a paying client out of this small campaign right here, and there was no one-on-one personalization. Now, I'm not claiming to be a cold email guru or discredit any cold email gurus who do highly believe in personalization. I do think it's effective. However, for the purposes of this video and this tutorial, I just wanted to create a system that was sort of a baseline for you. You can add to it, you can remove from it, and do your own testing. By no means am I a cold email expert or a cold email guru. There are plenty of those out there. Go consult with them when you're putting your campaign together. I just want to show you how the sausage is made, how to scrape, how to automate, how to outreach on a schedule. Sound fair? Cool. Lastly, what we'll do is we'll add them to a cold email campaign, and then we'll wait a week and we'll do it again. And it's all going to be automatic. So Let's go ahead and start building out our workflow. Just to give you a brief overview of what we're going to do, I have this all in one workflow. This can be 3 separate workflows, but essentially I broke it down like this. I have it in 3 different sections, and I'll explain why, but essentially we're using Appify to scrape. If you're unfamiliar with Appify, I'm going to leave a coupon down below. I think I can give you like $25 off or something, which is actually quite a bit of credits, but this is a marketplace for scrapers. Developers have scrapers, they build them, and then they sell them to you here. The scrapers we're using are actually pretty cheap, but you'll sign up here, you'll call these scrapers, you'll let them run, and then they'll send you data back. So what I mean by asynchronously is that we are kicking off a scraping activity. We're telling Appify, hey, go scrape this. We're setting them up with a job, and we're not waiting for a response. What I found is that if we waited for a response, then sometimes that response would time out and it would break the entire workflow, because sometimes we're going to go out and scrape like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 data points, and we don't want to sit there and wait. It'll break the workflow. So instead, we send the job off, and then we just catch the response whenever it's all done. And I'm going to show you how to do that in this video. But we fire off the scraper, and then we get the data back, we store the data, we sanitize the data, and then we activate our Facebook page scraper, which actually goes out to the Facebook page for the advertiser that is running the ad, and it pulls their name, phone number, so business name, their phone number, their email address, their website, if it's present, and stores it in the database. And that's when step 3 happens, when this catches the results for the Facebook page scraper and then automatically adds them to our Instantly campaign. Seems like a lot, because it is a lot. It is a complex system that I've tried to simplify the best I can, but it's very powerful because this is going to run week after week, and we're even going to catch people who are recently running ads. And I'm going to show you how we do that. Cool. Let's go ahead and hop in. So I am going to pull open a N8N brand new canvas. Give me 1 second. All right, so we're here inside of our N8N account, and we have a blank canvas here. So I'm going to name this YouTube ad scraper, or I should say meta ad library scraper to Instantly. Again, everything we create here is going to be available for download inside of the free community. I'm sorry, the premium community. So if you just want to skip this and import it and watch while you have it imported so you can make sure you understand all the nodes, cool, do that. If not, grab some coffee and we're going to go through it step by step. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a trigger. So we're going to build out sort of our first section that I showed you, which is this section right here. Let's see if I can draw a circle. We're going to build this out first. So if we come in here, I'm going to trigger this manually. I know in here we have it on a schedule. We'll get to the schedule here in a second, but while we're testing, we're going to trigger this manually. And so the first thing I want to do here is I'm going to add a settings node, and this is going to serve as sort of our form, so to speak. You'll see what I mean here in a second. So call this settings, and we need our search URL, and we need the amount of records that we want to scrape, and this is going to be a number. And so what I mean by the search URL is essentially what you're going to do is you're going to come into, this is the only manual thing you need to do is when you're trying to figure out what your niche is and what you're going to target. Right here I have a search term which is teeth whitening in double quotes, so it's search this exact phrase, and I find that this is finding sort of the, I don't know, client that I want to target the most, the B2B client I want to target the most. And so once I have a good search term, I would come here to Meta Ads Library, make sure that the type of client is actually showing up. They are the advertiser, because sometimes if you search for, say, solar, and you'll notice you'll get a bunch of RV ads and like just solar panels to charge phones and all that, and they may not be your ideal client. Make sure you narrow down what the search term is. And once that's done, you're going to come up here to your URL. You're going to copy this, and then inside of search URL, you're just going to paste that. So that's what the search URL is. And then the amount of records we want to scrape is how many of these records, these tiles, do we want to scrape? Now, if you notice here, just on the first row, Grow AI has 3 ads, okay? So that's only going to give us 1 company record, but it's going to be 3 records that we scrape, right? So just think about it. If we scrape 100, we might get 30 unique companies. So we're just going to go ahead and set this to 100 right now. You can modify this however you want. And remember, we're going to have this scraping on a weekly basis. We're going to have it scraping ads that are live in the last 30 days. And so very important that you just moderate it to whatever it is your budget is and your comfortability with fielding new leads. So we have that set there. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to calculate a 30-day period. Now I want this to run every week, but I also don't want it to run on like old data. So what I want it to do is pick like a 30-day window from 30 days ago. So using today as a reference, calculate 30 days ago and give me the ads in that time range, scrape all those and give me the advertiser information for those. So what we need to do here is we are going to look for the date time node, and let's see, we are going to subtract from a date. And let's see, calculate 30 days ago and subtract date from. We're going to use an expression. It's called a variable called now inside of N8N. So there you go. We have today's date now. And what I am going to do is subtract 30 days. And then we are going to name this, I don't know. Yeah, new date is fine. We'll leave it at new date. So we're going to test this step. And here we go. Today is May 5th. And so April 5th was 30 days ago. Perfect. Awesome. So now we have our 30-day window. We have now, and then we have the 30-day window. And so the next thing we're going to do is set the start date. Let's see. What are we going to do here? Let's go to set. Rename this set start date. And let's name this variable start date. Now, this doesn't need to be changed every time you run this. This is going to automatically update the now time, which is the time this is all relative to, at the time of execution. And so you don't have to update this. But what we need to do is the URL is expecting the date in a specific format. And right now, when we have our new date that we just created, it's got this whole blob here that we don't necessarily need. We actually just need the date portion. And so in order to do that, what I'll do is I will change this to date and time, right? And that's going to make it a date and time object that we can manipulate so that we can pull out the format we want. And then we are going to format it using the format function. And conveniently, that format that it default filled in for us is the format we need it in. So year, month, day. Cool. So once I test this step, we should get output, which is just the date. And there you go. So that's the start date. That's exactly what I wanted. So next thing we're going to do here is we're going to add the time range to the URL. So if I come into the Facebook ad library and I use these filters here, and I actually if I give it a time range, I'm going to show you what we're trying to do just automatically. So let's say we wanted to scrape 4/05/2025, okay, to present, which is today, and I apply that. When I come here to my URL, and I recognize you guys might not be able to see my URL, so what I'm going to do is I'll create a scratch pad here. So this is the search URL for my Facebook ad library search. This right here is me searching for the last 30 days. And so what I'm trying to do is automatically fill that in dynamically depending on runtime, because I don't always want to scrape from April 5th. I want that to change every time this executes. And so in order to do that, I need to add those query parameters, which is everything after this ampersand or this and sign, to the existing URL. And so the way we're going to do that is we are going to copy. Actually, we're not going to copy. We'll build it live. Why not? We'll use another set node. I guess we don't need to use a set node again. You know what? I'm going to use another set node just to keep things separate, okay? It's not going to harm anybody. So let's call this add URL. Let's add time range to URL. So we're going to do some data manipulation here, okay? So in order to do this, I'm referencing notes here, forgive me. We are going to reset the start URL. And this is going to be a string. And change this to an expression. We're going to drop the search URL in there that we set earlier. And now we're going to manipulate this field here. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to add something to that field. And so the way we're going to do that is we'll have a plus sign. And then in quotes, we are going to add the ampersand. And let's reference this handy dandy scratch pad here all the way up to the equal sign. We'll copy that. Let's go back to our workflow, and I'm just going to paste that right after the ampersand. This is very tedious, and you better get this right, because if not, you're going to mess up the formatting. I might mess it up live. And then you have the equal sign. We're going to add the start date. Let's blow this up so you can see what we're doing here. So now we've added all this. Actually, we had the ampersand here. So we added all this so far, which looks good. That's exactly what this looks like. And now we need to add ampersand start date max. So this string right here, we're just going to copy this and go ahead and throw in another plus sign, single quotes, because we're not using a variable here, and start date max. So let's make sure that this looks the same. So what I'm going to do is just copy and paste this into my Google Doc just to compare really fast. So let's go ahead and put that down here, and I'll paste that. So start date minimum equals cool, start date max. Cool, that looks good. I think that that'll work. Formatting, I messed up the highlighting here, but not a big deal. Cool, there you go. That comparison works. So we've successfully formatted the URL. So now we have the ability to dynamically search 30 days ago, regardless of what time we are running this or what date we are running this. Very powerful. Next thing we need to do is format our API call, okay, to Appify. So we're using Appify scraper, as I said. So this is going to trigger add library scraper, and we will be scraping asynchronously. So if we come into our Appify, sign up, whatever, assuming you have an account, I'm going to go to my console and I'm going to show you the actor that we're running, and that is the Facebook pages scraper. Now you can do this I'm sorry, not the Facebook pages scraper. It is the Facebook ad library scraper first. We will use a pages scraper later. We're using the one by ḵ𝐻𝐻𝐶𝐶𝐶. You can do this manually. You notice the start URL is in here. If I just went ahead and click start, it would go out and scrape the Facebook pages, but we're actually going to use the API because we're doing this programmatically. We want this to be automatic every single week. So if I'm going to come over here, I go click on API endpoints, it'll sort of tell us how we can accomplish this. So remember I mentioned synchronously and get data set items. A lot of people do this. They'll fire off the scraper and then they will wait for results. And then the results will come back, which is super convenient. But the problem is this will time out. So if you're doing this tested it with 1,000 records, it took so long that the N8N workflow timed out. The actor was still running and it still did its job. But by the time it ended, the N8N workflow had already broken. And so that data never really made it into the workflow. And that's problematic because you need to actually do something with the data. And the whole point is to avoid having to manually triage this data. And so what we're going to do is run the actor. And then we are let's pop open this Appify documentation, and we're actually going to tell it where to send the data whenever it's done. And so if you come in here, let's see, I'm going to try to find the instructions for this. I'm going to show you how to do it anyway, but essentially we need to tell it, hey, the value is base64, JSON. Okay, cool. Yeah. We're going to tell it, hey, whenever this event happens, send this data to our webhook, which is in step 2. This little guy right here. Whenever you're done, send the data here so that we can do stuff with it. Cool? Not that simple though, because it wants it in a specific format, base64 encoded. What does that mean? Not super important that you understand it, but base64 encoding is essentially, think about if you put a package in like this special, I don't know, put it in a special box that protects it before you send it to your family member for Christmas or whatever. You're essentially encoding your package inside of packaging, your box, whatever. Probably did a bad job explaining it, but it looks like encryption, but it's not encryption because it can be decoded on the other end. And the whole reason we do this is because we're going to be passing over an endpoint URL. So if you come to a webhook module, if I add, let's add a node here. If I add a webhook trigger, we have this URL, and in this URL, there's a bunch of special characters. There's like a colon, there's /, there's dashes, there's numbers, there's letters, there's all this stuff in here. If I just feed that to the scraper, it's going to break. It doesn't know how to sort all that because there's all these special characters that typically mean something else in coding language or in API language, but in order to avoid it breaking, we encode it into something that is just one continuous string, your special packaging, and it will get decoded on the Appify side. So a lot of words to show you what's actually going to happen. So let's come over here and let's start to build out this API call. So here is the endpoint that we're going to be calling. So we're going to go ahead and just copy this and pop it in here. This is a post request. No, not a patch, a post, I believe. I'll double check that. So if I come in here, yep, post request right here in the green. Awesome. And sweet. I think it even has my API key in there. So maybe I'll need to, does it? Yep, it has my API key. I believe so. I'll go ahead and delete that after this so nobody steals all my credits. Let me make sure. So where are those API keys? Settings, API and integrations, and I believe, yeah, I think that's the API key. No, it's not that one. It's this one, ZM. Yep, okay, so it automatically adds my API key in there, perfect. You can set up your API key in the query parameter, or you can actually set it up inside of authentication, generic credential type, header authentication, and then I believe I have my Appify API key already stored in here. If you check it out, you have authorization, bearer, and then you have your API key. All that is represented inside of the documentation. If you look at the example that they have here, they show you how you set up header authorization. Now, I just leaked my API key, so I'll make sure to delete those after this video is complete. Don't share your API key with other people, especially with something like Appify, because you have a wallet there and you can actually spend somebody's money if you know their API key, and that's not cool. So what were we doing? Now we're here. We need to build out this API call. So this is actually going to go ahead and run our scraper. But if we come into our Appify, let's go to actors and let's look at the ad scraper and let's look at a previous run. If we just pop open this previous run and we look at the input, we need to provide it this information from N8N. And so I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, because this input is what we're going to send over to the scraper. So if we come down here to send body, we're going to turn that on. And then I'm going to select using JSON, change this to expression, pop this open, and paste that value, that JSON. And let's go ahead and start filling this with variables. So count, we're going to delete that because we set that early on, our records variable, right? And you notice that's a number. Okay, see the little pound sign? That's a number data type, and that's what we want. Have that set to 100, and then the other variable is our URL, because our URL is going to change. So let's go ahead and delete the URL. We're going to have this in quotes because it's a string variable, and we set it with the time range at the end, and let's pop that in there. And so now we have our URL, and we're good to go. I think that'll work. Cool. So now what we need to do is come back to our API docs, and inside here, query parameters, which means it goes in the URL, we need to add our webhook, okay? So before we do that, let's go ahead and back out of here and let's create our webhook trigger for step 2, because this is all step 1. If you remember, this is all, let's bear with me, this is all step 1, and we're gonna prematurely build out step 2, because we need some information from the trigger for step 2. So we'll come in here and add another trigger, and the trigger is going to be webhook call. And we'll name this catch scraper results. Awesome. And in here, we'll be testing this manually. So we're going to grab the test URL right now. But whenever we're doing this for the production environment, you're going to want to make sure you do this with the production URL, because once you activate this workflow, what's active is the production URL and not the test URL. But for the purposes of this video and testing, we're going to do the test URL. So I'm going to copy that, but we need to base 64 encode it. Now, I'm going to show you an easy way to do it. We don't need AI or anything. I'll copy this link and send it to you so that when you click this link, it opens up this recipe, just like I have it. But this is a tool called ｃｈėŽėഛėഛ, and it helps you manipulate data, right? So we're going to change data from plain text input to base 64. And so if I come over here and I remove this, actually, I'm going to send this to you, and it's going to look like, this is what it'll look like when it comes to you. example.com. Okay, that's what it's going to look like. So we're going to go ahead and replace example.com with our webhook. So I just copied and pasted our webhook from our step 2 trigger, and it automatically output this random string of characters. But all this is doing is taking this very oddly formatted string, which says, hey, anytime an actor run succeeds, send the results to this URL, and it makes it into this nice, pretty string here. I'm copying that whole thing as it exists and going back into our API call, send query parameters, and let's go ahead and paste the value here so we don't forget, but let's make sure we copy this exactly as it appears. So lowercase webhooks is the name. And now we have lowercase webhooks, and the value is this nicely packaged string that tells it where to send the results. And so if I click test step, this should work. Boom. So it actually kicked off the runner. So if I come in here, I should click on runs and I should see something running. There you go. So we're running. So that API call worked. So this is actually running. It's going out and it's scraping the ad library for teeth whitening ads in the last 30 days. It's going to pull all that data. I'm going to let that run and I'm going to show you what sort of data is available. All right, so that data completed, it got 100 results. And if I click on here and I check out my runs, this is the latest run, and look at the output data, and we have all this information. Let's see if I can, yeah, there we go. Scroll. We have all this information as it relates to the ads that were pulled. If I pop this open, let's see if I can pop this open in, yeah, preview in another tab. So there's all this information about these ads. There's the advertiser, the ad copy, the destination link, and all this stuff. Now, this alone doesn't give us contact information. It just gives us information about the ad. There's a bunch of stuff in here, stuff that we honestly don't even need. But yeah, it's enough. It's enough stuff, but we're gonna actually enrich this data and we're gonna get contact information from this data. So this information finished. Let's see if it actually called our webhook, and it didn't. You know why it didn't call our webhook? Because we weren't listening. And so rookie mistake here, but no problem. We'll do it again. The only problem is I'm spending money when I do this. So instead of 100, let's just go ahead and do 50 for the sake of time and money. But I'll come over here and I will run this again. And this time I will click on test this workflow so that we are waiting for a trigger event. Let's make sure that our actor is actually running. And it is. It should take a few seconds to scrape 50 items. It's already at 30. Cool. So it completed. Let's see if it actually caught the information. So if I come in here, we didn't get a response. Ah, I know why. We'd have to run it again. Make this a post request, and that should fix it. So sorry about that. Actually, I'm not sorry. I think troubleshooting is pretty important, and troubleshooting it live. Let's stop this. Let's go ahead and execute this workflow. Okay, and then now let's make sure this is listening. We're waiting for post request. There you go. Okay. So now we have the results that came back, which was helpful. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin this data because we're going to work with this data set moving forward. So this isn't necessarily all the ad results. If you realize, like, when I come over here and I look at this data set, this had a bunch of stuff. There's probably like 50 different items. But when I look inside of N8N, that webhook, it's not all that. So we actually need to go and query the data set. And we do that with another API call. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So we run an API call called get dataset items. So if I come over here to API, let's view API items and let's search. Let's see if we can use the search function here. Datasets, I believe. Datasets. We're looking for get dataset items. I have it here in my notes, but I want to make sure I show you where the reference is. There you go. Let's see, items, get items. There you go. This is what we want. So we want to get data set items. So we're going to be using this endpoint. Here's the API documentation if you need it, but I'm going to build it for you here. So let's go make another HTTP request, and we'll name this get data set items. And this is going to be a GET request to a specific endpoint, which was present inside of the API reference. Now, whenever you copy and paste it, as a matter of fact, let's go ahead and copy and paste it from the API reference, because that's probably what you're going to do if you're building this manually. I want to make sure you guys get what you need out of this. So let's come back here. So when you paste it here, you notice that there's this little variable here that says dataset ID. We need to actually fill in the dataset ID, and I'm going to show you where that dataset ID comes from. So we caught a webhook. Inside of this webhook, if we scroll down, you will see that we have this default dataset ID. That's what we want to go ahead and replace that variable with. And so now if we look at what's actually filled in here, we have this URL that was built dynamically with that variable that we got from our webhook. Cool. Authentication, we'll come back in here and assign our header authentication to our Appify preconfigured credential. And let's see, what are we going to do here? Query parameters. What format do I want this in? So I want to tell it I want it in a JSON format. And the way we do that is by feeding in a query parameter, telling it what format we want it in. Pretty simple. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on query parameters. The name is going to be format, and the value is going to be JSON. It's probably default JSON, but whatever. Let's go ahead and test this. Cool. So we successfully reached out to Appify. We got all of our items back. You see there's 100 items here. This must have been the first webhook that was coming in. It was probably still retrying, so we have 100 items. Cool, we'll work with that. I'm going to go ahead and pin this data because we're going to work with this data moving forward to build out the rest of the workflow. So we have 100 items. If you look in here, this is all that information that was provided, like the ad text, the advertiser, the page ID, all that stuff. Cool. So next thing we're going to do is I'm actually going to come in here. I'm going to use this same sheet. I'll include a copy of this sheet inside the premium community for those of you guys who want to use this same sheet. If you're building from scratch, you can make this whatever you want, but I'll walk you through sort of what information I like to keep from here. So let me just reset these. Cool. So if you notice up here, I have these headers. So I have the page ID, page name, email, phone, address, website. This stuff is actually not going to come in with the ad library scraper, no problem. But the rest of this stuff, icebreaker, I'll leave that there for now. But the ad text, ad headline, ad description, ad CTA, all this stuff, this is my database essentially, and this is information that we're going to pull in. And so let's just go ahead and connect our Google Sheets node. Before we do that, actually no, we'll go ahead and build out our Google Sheets node. Let's see. So we have our ad, we're going to append or update rows in Sheet. So you can just update rows in Sheet individually. You could break this out into a for loop, but what's going to happen is you're going to run into rate limits with the Google Sheets API. And so I find that if you use the sort of these bulk nodes here, add or append or update sheets, it works better. And so what we're going to do here is essentially we're going to select our sheet from the list. So that's my sheet, and the tab is just named sheet 1. I probably should rename that, but we're going to match on page ID. Now, the reason we're doing this is we're using the append or update sheet. And that's important because what that's going to do is check if a record exists based on whatever criteria I give it. And in this case, it's the page ID. And if the record ID exists, we're just going to update that row. But if the record ID doesn't exist, then it's going to create the row. And that's very important because this is going to run every single week. So we don't want to just add duplicates, and I'm going to talk about duplicates here in a second, to our database. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for the page ID. And if the page ID already exists in our database, we're not going to recreate one. We're just going to update that row. And so that's how we do it. Column to match on, and then here's the matching criteria. Now, let's go ahead and fill out what we have from here. So page name, we're just going to go ahead and drag and drop the information that we need from here. Email, we're not going to have the email, phone number, address, or website yet, but we will have the page URL, and that is page profile URI. All right. page intro, we're not going to have yet. That's going to come whenever we scrape the page. Icebreaker, we're going to ignore for now. I'll leave that in there for you guys if you want to create an icebreaker later. Cool. Add text. Add text. What we're going to look for is, I believe it's just called text. There you go. So we're going to drag that over. The headline, I believe it's called title. Yep. We'll just, I don't like that because that is like, here it is. That's the one I want. All right. So title, and then description. If you're not familiar with the sort of the format of an ad, all we're doing is pulling out the different components of the ad just in case we want to store it. You can use this data to personalize the icebreaker later on. It's the reason why we're storing it. I'm not actually going to use it, but I'm storing it. We're scraping it. Might as well keep it. Next thing we want is, I believe it's called CTA. Is it? Let's see. I have my notes over here. Yeah, we'll do CTA. We'll do CTA text. And then the link, it's going to be link_URL. Awesome. That's the call to action link. And I think that's it. We're going to leave it. We're going to leave that as it is right now. Now, let's rename this. Add or update database. Okay. The issue with getting dataset items, which is 100 items, and just throwing it right into the database is, remember when I mentioned that Grow, oh look, we had a new one that just showed up. Grow AI has 3 different ads that they're running. So 3 different ad sets or campaigns. Grow AI is probably in there 3 times. And so we don't want Grow AI in there 3 times. We just want it in there once. And so we need to do some stuff with this data before we add to the database. And so if I click add here, we're going to search for deduplicate or remove duplicates. And then we will remove items repeated within current input. Perfect. And instead of all fields, we are going to compare a selected field, and we're going to stick with the page ID because that should be unique for every company. And once we do that, if I test this step, we should reduce from 100 down to 46 items. Okay, so there's 46 unique companies running ads in the last 30 days with our 100 record count. Cool. Now, furthermore, I'm going to filter a little bit more, okay, because we're using let's check out these actors here so I can show you exactly which actor we're using. We're using the Facebook pages scraper, okay? Facebook page, not Instagram page. Meta, you can run ads on Facebook, Instagram, probably WhatsApp and all that stuff, but sometimes they're just Instagram ads and they don't have a Facebook page, but they have an Instagram profile. We want to filter those out. So what we're going to do is we're going to further filter using the filter node, and we're going to say, hey, remove or actually keep anything. Let's look. Page profile URI. This is the field that we're going to evaluate, which is the link, right? If this string contains Facebook, the word Facebook, then we're going to keep it. Let's test that step. So discarded 6 items. Okay, let's go in here to discarded. Let's look at why it discarded them. Let's look for page profile URI again. Should highlight it when we see it. Hopefully it's not too hard to catch. I just want to show you how this is Instagram stuff. And I've already seen a few things that say Instagram. But look, link URL, everything is going to Instagram. So these are right here, page profile URI. You see how it's Instagram? We don't want that because our Facebook ad scraper is not going to work well with Instagram. It's actually going to fail. So we got to filter those out. And we did using this filter. So now what are we left with? So we went down from 100 items. We removed duplicates. Now we're down to 46 items. And then from the duplicates, we removed the Instagram stuff and we're down to 40 items. Perfect. So out of 100, we got 40. That's why you might want to bump this up to 1,000 and maybe you'll get 400. So let's rename this remove IG profiles. Cool. All right. So now when I add those 40 items to my database. We're not going to hit any rate limits because we're using the right node. And if I come into this, now that our Google Sheets was automatically updated, pretty freaking sweet, right? With all the information we need. But the most important stuff, this stuff is not actually updated yet. So we need to go ahead and find this. So how do we do that? Okay. Let's go, and what we're going to do is we're going to determine. Remember, we're running this on a weekly basis. So we're going to be updating this database. Then we're going to determine, have we already scraped these pages? Because if we ran it last week, maybe we scraped some of these pages. We don't want to scrape those again because that costs us money. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Google Sheets module. We're going to get rows in Sheets. We're going to select our sheet. And essentially, we're not going to add any filters here. We're just going to get all the rows. May seem redundant because we're putting rows and then we're getting rows, but we actually need all the information from the rows. If you notice here, when we put them, we only got the information here to work with that we added. But, and we're going to learn a valuable lesson here. This is crazy. I'm going to show you why that happened. But we need all the rows because I'm going to go ahead and check whether this has been scraped before. I'm going to create a filter for this. And if it has, then I'm not going to use it in my page scraper because we don't want to double scrape. But if you notice, this ran and got 1,600 items because it ran multiple times. Okay. If you come into the settings here for this node, just go ahead and click on execute once. And then we will test that again, and it should only run once and grab the items that we have in our database, which is 40 items, which is in alignment with what we just added. Okay, cool. Next thing, let's rename this because we want to stay organized. Get database. Cool. Now we need to filter. Let's do some filtering. So if we scraped previously, we're going to filter those out. So in this case, none of them have been scraped previously, so the filter shouldn't filter anything out. But we're going to come over here and we're going to evaluate the pages scraped column or row. I don't know the difference in the C student. String is not equal to yes. Okay, so if the string is not equal to yes, if there's no yes in this column all the way over here, if there's no yes in that column, then keep going. Cool. So when we test this, we got 40 items because none of them were filtered. Now watch this. Let's go ahead. Let me show you how this works. I'm just going to type in yes here for that second item. And if I test it, I should get 39 kept. Ooh, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? Because we didn't re-get our database. We're working with old data. So now if I run that filter again, 39 items, 1 item discarded. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and remove this yes, because we will go ahead and scrape all 40 just for the sake of this demo. Let's rename this filter out already scraped. All right, cool. We are zooming right through this. Okay. This next node is going to be a little complicated for you guys, but you can pause the video, copy exactly what I have, or if you're a premium member, you can just copy and paste. Actually, you're going to import this, so all this is going to already be done for you. So we're going to use the code node, and essentially we need to format the input for our Facebook page scraper. So if we come into the actor and we click on our Facebook pages scraper, let's go to one of our runs so you can see that one only had 1. Let's go to this one that had 29. And you see the input has an array called start URLs, and you have this sort of very particular format. We need to provide that same format. We need to build this same input inside of N8N so we can pass it the correct input, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this bit of code in here, and it's going to do exactly that for us, okay? So we're taking the page URL, and we're building out we're building out JSON with an array that's called start URLs, and we're essentially building out the input for Appify. Okay, so if I test this step, there you go. We have start URLs built out in the same format that we see right here. Pretty cool, right? All right. Again, if you need to pause it and copy this, you can. If you're in the premium community, you're probably just going to import this entire workflow, and so you don't have to worry about this. But let's go ahead and rename this format page scraper input. Now, there is a case where you do all this and actually you already have all the contact information in the database. And so when it gets to this point it's, hey, there's no start URLs because you already have all this contact information and we need to account for that, okay? So we need to make sure that the output of this, which is this information here, is not empty. If it's empty, we're just gonna end the workflow. But if it isn't empty, then we're gonna go ahead and kick off the scraper. So we're gonna use the if node here. Check for emptiness. And what we're looking for is if start URLs, which is an array, the array type, which means we need to use array conditionals, is not empty, then proceed. Cool. So it's not empty, so it went down the true branch, which is exactly what we wanted. And lastly, we just need to kick off the Facebook pages scraper. So if I come into our actor and check out our API endpoints, we get exactly how we kick off the scraper. Okay, so I just copied that to my clipboard. Let's go ahead and add an HTTP node. We're gonna name this execute pages scraper. Cool. It is a post request, and we're just gonna copy and paste what we had over there. But we also need our handy dandy webhooks. And for that, we need our step 3 webhook that we haven't even created yet. Ooh. Let's go ahead and copy this handy dandy note in this step 3. All right. Let me zoom out a little bit, make it a lot easier. Okay, let's go ahead and add another trigger, which is going to be another webhook. Let's make sure we don't make the same mistake and configure this for post. And we're going to copy this URL, go to our handy dandy CyberChef tool and paste this URL, and our output got updated. So we're just going to copy this. Yep, we're going to copy that base64 encoded value and come into our page scraper, send query parameters. The name is webhooks. Is it webhooks? I always get confused. I don't know if it's plural or singular, but let's go ahead and view the reference. Scroll down to Yep, webhooks. It is plural. And then paste the value there. Awesome. What else do we need? We need to come down to the body, and we are actually going to send JSON. And remember that input is start URLs. Let's see, if I just pump that in there and type to JSON string, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. So we actually need to build it out like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy our input runs. Let's pop open this one and input, copy. Okay, paste that in here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is actually from this square bracket all the way down to the closed square bracket, I'm going to just remove this, and then I'm going to fill it with start URLs right here. And now what I'll do is type .to JSON URL. And there you go. That should be properly formatted. And we're going to test it. So if it's not, we'll fix it. So we're going to go. I'm going to go ahead and test it. Make sure this green's up. It did. Let's make sure we're listening for our results right over here. And we can pop into Appify and make sure that the runner is actually running. There you go. So we're crawling. We should be crawling 40 pages, I believe. If we come into this run and we look at the input, here's the input. So 39. The reason it's 39 is because I did the same thing. I didn't update our database after running it. So we only ran with 39 that we had filtered from when I put the yes in one of the fields. That's okay. It's 39 examples. It's plenty. So this is going to run. This can take a few minutes. You can imagine if this is running for 700,000 people, it's going to take longer. And that's why we don't want to run this synchronously, because this one specifically takes longer. It's going out to the pages and it's trying to find the contact information. As you can see right here, you have contact information that's coming in. It takes a while to do that. And so if you're running synchronously, if you're just waiting for this and it's just spinning, it'll time out after a while and then your whole workflow is broken. So instead, we're going to do the hard thing and run it asynchronously. I'm going to let that run for a little bit and then we'll come back when it's done. All right, so that actor took 1 minute and 47 seconds to run, and let's see if we caught our webhook. And we didn't. Oh, yeah, we did. Cool. It just came in as we spoke. Perfect. We have this information. We're going to pin this data because we're going to work with this data. And just like the last time, we actually need to get those data set items, right? So I'm going to come over here and just copy this node and move it down here, connect it, and I'm going to unpin this data. You can just press P as a shortcut and it'll unpin the data. And I'm going to actually get the data set items. We already have this already mapped because I just copied it from step 2 and it's connected to the trigger for step 3. And so if I run this, we can actually get the data set items, which should have the email addresses and all that stuff from the pages we scraped. Let's just do a quick cursory overview. Perfect. All right, that's the information we want. I'm going to go ahead and pin this data so we don't have to run that scraper again while we're building our workflow. And let me just go ahead and save. I feel like I haven't saved in a while and that's dangerous. So awesome. So we got that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to update our database once again, and we're going to add the contact info to the sheet. So if we go to Sheets, we're going to append or update row. We're going to call this add contact info. And what we'll do is select our sheet and we're going to match column again. Are we going to match column again? Are we going to match column again? Let's see. Yeah, here's what we're going to do. We are going to match on page ID, but for the matching criteria, we're actually going to use the inside of the pages scraper. It's weird. It comes back as, let me search for ID here. It comes back, it's not this page ID. You would think it's this page ID, but for example, if we go to Ladies of Black Hills, and come over to our data set and let's just search for ladies. Oh, maybe we search Black Hills. Okay, I think that's it. Let's just scroll all the way over. Okay, Ladies of the Black Hills. So you see the page ID here is like this 5688 yada yada. Ends in 636. The page ID here is actually what you would think is page ID is not page ID. Instead, in this data set, it's called something different. It's called Facebook Pages Ad Library ID, and that's the ID that matches the page ID from the last scraper. And so we're going to make sure that we match using that for this node. And so that should find the entry for this company and then update the contact info for this company. Okay. So a little confusing. Took a bit of testing for me to figure that out the hard way, but you have it now the easy way. So we're just going to go ahead and fill in what we have now. So we have, let's see, the page URL we already have, but page intro is one of those pieces of information we didn't have. So I'll just go ahead and drag and drop. We have address right here, drag and drop in case we want it for any sort of personalization. Page name, we're just going to go ahead and drag and drop the title there. And now we need the important stuff. We need like contact information. There we go. Phone number, email. That's a good email. That's a Gmail. Pretty awesome, right? Website. And cool. Only thing we need to do is we're going to update page scraped. We're going to change that to yes. Okay. All lowercase yes, because we scraped that page. We never want to scrape it again because we have contact info, right? Let's go ahead and test that. See what happens. Now, in an effort to not like dox anybody, I'm going to try to hide some of this data. Okay. You're going to have to trust me on this, but I don't want necessarily people's stuff, if I can prevent it, being all out there, even though you're probably going to follow this and do it yourself. But just trust me and see that the information got stored. I hid their contact information, but addresses, websites that got stored, if it's present. It's not going to be present for all of them, but it's going to be present for some, and those are the some that we're going to reach out to. So once we got that test step worked, so we go ahead and save this, but we still have some work to do because in step 3, we're actually going to determine if there's emails existing, if they were in our campaign previously, and then we're going to add them to an instantly campaign. So next thing we're going to do is we will pull the database again, very similar to this get database, right? So let's go ahead and actually we can just copy this. Let's just copy this node. Let's not work harder. Let's work smarter. And let's pull the database, make sure execute once is turned on. Cool. And now we have the database, but this database this time now has contact information. And sorry for Luminix Health, your email address is out there, I apologize. But we have that database, we have 40 items, and now we need to filter out any leads that were already added to a campaign. So similar to our pages already scraped filter, we're going to create another filter that is going to filter leads already in campaign. Okay, and so what we're looking for is our added to campaign field. If it is not equal to yes, then continue. And I'm going to add another filter here because remember I said not every record has an email. And so I want to evaluate if email is not empty, then continue. So if it meets both these criteria, that's what this and means. If it hasn't been added to the campaign already, so yes is not in that specific cell, and it has an email address, then proceed. So if I come over here and test this step, 26 items. So that means there was 26 emails, and the rest of them probably failed one of these conditions, but I bet it's the email condition. So out of the 40 items, 26 of them had email addresses. So those are 26 good email addresses we can add to our Instantly campaign. Now, before we move on to adding to the Instantly campaign, I realize that I haven't introduced Instantly at all. So Instantly is a cold email platform. Let's see. Cold email platform, I think it's about $100 a month worth its weight in gold, but it allows you essentially to put together cold email campaigns. You can buy pre-warmed email addresses so you can automatically land in the inbox and literally reach out to these people on autopilot. And the cool thing is that they are very tech forward and they have an API, and we're going to use that API today. Yeah, so let's see. Instantly API docs. Let's pull that up. Just click on the API Explorer. So we have the ability to do a bunch of stuff in the API, but we're going to keep it pretty simple. One thing I want to highlight though is in the API, let's see if I could search for rate limit. Do we have rate limits in here? Let's go to their docs, and pretty sure they have rate limits. What rate limits are is essentially the service Instantly limiting how many requests it can get in a specific amount of time because it costs them money. There it is, rate limits. It costs them money every time to process a request. And so sometimes systems are broken and just continuously knocking on their door, and it's going to cost them money, so they limit it. And it looks like here you're allowed to make 600 requests per minute. And so because of that, we're going to be scraping volume. You might be scraping, I'm only scraping 100 here, so I won't hit a rate limit during testing. But if I bump that up to 5,000, then I might be adding 5,000 leads to my Instantly at a time. And you don't want to hit that rate limit because then it will deny you and start, break your workflow. So we're going to create some logic to just sort of loop over batches. Okay. So we're going to break this down. I'm going to show you how to do that. It gets a little complicated, but we have to do it or else it'll break our workflow. And so we're going to search for the loop node, and we are going to loop over 100 at a time. Okay. So we have a rate limit of 600. Okay. It's at 600 a minute. You can reverse engineer all the math and probably come up with the optimal amount, but we're just going to do 100 at a time and just hope we don't hit that rate limit. You can probably increase this and be okay, but let's just use this for the sake of teaching. Loop 100 at a time. And so once you do that, it creates sort of this node here where you can loop through specific actions. So you have this replace me node. I'm just going to go ahead and delete it and delete this loop. And we're going to add some logic here. So 100 at a time, we're going to do something. And that something is, first thing is the API call to Instantly. So if we look at this HTTP request node, we are going to add to Instantly. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to delete all these. Let me move it over here. I don't want to reveal these email addresses, so bear with me. Okay. So here's our Instantly campaign. If you're not familiar with Instantly, this isn't going to be a full-blown course on how to create a cold email campaign, nor am I the right person to teach you how to create a cold email campaign. But I essentially have a niche list sequence here. We have 3 or 4 emails that just have generic text in it, but honestly, I've done this before and I get responses, and like I said earlier, I've landed clients. I'm going to go ahead and export this campaign. Let me just go ahead and yeah, I'll copy that and I'll put it in our notes. So for you folks who are in the premium community, you can just import this campaign, make it your own, and then use it however you please. However, there is an important piece of information that we need here, and that is our campaign ID. And I'm going to get that by clicking share campaign. As a matter of fact, I don't need it. It's up here. There we go. So in our URL, you can't see my URL, but in my URL box, I have the campaign ID. And so I'm just going to go ahead and paste it here because we're going to reference that later. Campaign ID. Awesome. So we need to create an API call to add our leads to the Instantly campaign. And so how do we do that? Let's search for lead and create a lead. Okay, this is the endpoint we're going to use. We are going to create a lead into that specific campaign. And so if I look at this endpoint here, awesome. Yep. All right, cool. I'm going to build this from my notes just so that it's easier. So we're not switching back and forth. So this is a post request, and the endpoint, like we just saw, it was this API v2 leads. And then authentication Instantly has its own API keys. If you go into your settings and then you come into integrations, right over here, you have your API keys. I created them with this scope. So if you look at leads all, campaigns all, lead list all, lead labels all, when you create your API key, it's going to have you select scopes. You can come back here, pause the video, and check out the scopes here, and you can add the same scopes. You may be able to remove some of these scopes, but I found that it worked using these scopes right here. And I just created another credential. So inside of our header authentication, I have an Instantly lead gen credential. Cool. That's already configured. If you don't have it, you'll just create a new credential. Same thing here, authorization. And then for the value, if I click expression, capital B, bearer, space, and then you would just paste your API key exactly as it appears right there. Okay, so I'm actually going to remove that because I don't need it. Okay. All right, next thing we need to do is we need to format the body of our requests because that is important. So if I come in here, it gives us a example of what the body is. Now, I don't need all this information to be sent, nor do I have all this information, but really the important pieces are the campaign that I'm adding it to, which we just copied the campaign ID, the email. I can add the website. I don't have their first and last name, but I do have their company name. I have their phone number, and I think I'm going to leave skip if in campaign. So if it's already in the campaign, we're already doing a bunch of deduplicating, so it really shouldn't be in the campaign. But if for some reason it's already in the campaign, don't add it. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do that. I have this built out in my handy dandy notepad. We're going to use JSON, expression, pop this open, and paste. So here's what we're going to do. Campaign ID that we had copied earlier, perfect. And we have our email that's coming in from the loop, and we haven't executed the loop yet. So if we execute it, we should green up those slots. So this is going to pass over 100 items. Because we're only dealing with 26, it's going to pass over all 26. But if we were dealing with 126, it would pass over 100 first. It'll do what we tell it to do, and then it'll come back and catch the last 26 on the second execution. But here we go. You notice we're greened up now because we actually have data to work with. So we're essentially passing in our email, we're passing in the website, we're passing in the page name, which should be somewhere in here. Did I overlook it? Where's the page name? Oh, there it is. I'm hovering right over it. And then we have the phone number, and then skip if added to campaign true. Perfect. That's all we need. This should now, when I run this, should add all 26 leads to my Instantly campaign. And so I'm going to move this over again in an attempt to be diligent and not expose people. I'm going to go ahead and click test. There's a few that are going to get exposed just naturally, but let me try not to expose everybody. That's running. You see it, node's going, and it looks like 26 items were added to our Instantly campaign. And perfect. Come over here that we have these emails that automatically got added to our campaign. So if our campaign was turned on, if we look at our schedule here, we have a schedule of Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. the email sequences will just start firing off, and those leads will start receiving your emails. Okay, pretty cool. You would think we're done. We're not done yet. We have a few things to do. All right. So what I want to do here is I'm going to add all these to the campaign. However, if something fails for some reason, I don't want it to stop my workflow. And I also want to log errors if anything happens, okay? Just so that we know and we'll have it here in our database, okay? But we also need to update this, right? Add it to campaign. We haven't done that yet. And we need to do that because the next time this executes, we want to make sure we're not adding duplicates. In the instantly API call, we did say, hey, don't skip if it's already added to the campaign, but we want to be sure and we want to be able to store this information in our database. So let's go ahead and use our Google Sheets. Let's update a row in the sheet. So yeah, I think this should be okay. Let's go ahead and click on update row. I typically use the append or update row, but this time we're just going to update row. We're going to update added to campaign and pick our sheet. Let me save that. Select the sheet. And then the column to match on is going to be the page ID, pretty consistent here. And if I come into the loop here, we can drag and drop the page ID. And what else do we need? That's it. Add it to campaign, set that to yes. So if I test this right now, all of these are empty. If I run this, the 26 that had emails should now be set to yes for added to campaign. And we will check that here in a second. Okay, there you go. So all those 26 had emails for them and they're all added to the campaign and our database is updated. Now, campaign error. If one of these or all of these errored, I want to log that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is copy this node, paste it, and connect this error branch. And let's just name this log error. And we're going to come down here, scroll down to campaign error. We're not going to select added to campaign because if it errored, it didn't add to campaign. So I remove that. Select expression. And then I'm just going to select JSON error. Now we had no errors here, so that's not going to populate. And I don't feel like taking another 30 minutes of your time. So you're just going to have to trust me there that if there's an error, it's going to pop up in JSON.error and then we will save that error. Awesome. Now let's make sure we're done. I think we're done. Yeah, I think we're done. We're not done. No way we're done. See? Okay, cool. Hopefully you didn't leave because we're not done. So we built this out for the first 100, but if there was 200, we would need to tell it to go back to the loop and continue looping till you reach the end. So we actually need to connect these all the way back to the loop. And we'll come over here, connect that all the way back to the loop. And let's try to make this a little prettier if we can. Perfect. So now, if this was a batch of 700, this loop will run 7 times. It'll go through this entire sequence. And once it's done, it'll be done and the whole workflow will be completed. And just like that, we have our entire system. Now, before you end, very important, we did this whole thing in test mode. I said I wanted to create this on a schedule, okay? So there's a few things we need to do. One, we're going to create this on a schedule, but then we also need to switch to production URLs because we've been using the test URL this entire time, okay? We're also going to get rid of any pinned data because we don't want to run this using pinned data. And so let's go ahead and make those changes. So let's delete that trigger and we're going to add another trigger, which is on a schedule. Let's see, on schedule. And the schedule is, let's execute weekly on Mondays. So we are going to execute every 1 week on Monday at midnight. Perfect. And where did it go? There it is. Okay. And we're just going to connect this to our step 1 workflows. And now before we go live, let's go ahead and remove pinned data. So I'm going to click on the node and press P to remove the pinned data. for any node that has pin data. Let's save. And now we need to get the production URLs and base64 encode them. So here's the production URL. Let's go back to 𝐶hěc, paste that in there. Now we have an updated value that we need to put in our webhooks query parameter here. So we're going to replace our test webhook base64 encoded string with our production webhook base64 encoded string. And we need to do that one more time with step 3's trigger. So copy this back into 𝐶hěc, paste, and then copy this. And for our page scraper, we're going to replace the base64 encoded string for our webhooks with the production URL and click save. Now, all we need to do is activate this. So every Monday at midnight, this is going to run. It's going to go pull 100 records from the Facebook ad library scraper. It's going to filter based on the ads that were running, have an impression date in the last 30 days. It's going to get all that information. We're going to feed it into our Google Sheets. We're going to determine if we already have an entry for it. If we don't, we're going to add an entry for it. Then it's going to come down here to step 2. It's going to determine if we've already scraped that page before. If it hasn't, we're going to execute the page scraper in Appify. The results are going to get sent over to step 3, where we're going to add the contact info to our database. We're going to determine if they're already in our Instantly campaign. We're going to determine if they have an email address. And if they meet that criteria, we're going to add them to our Instantly campaign. This system alone will almost certainly, depending on your sales skills, depending on how fast you respond and how well you respond to these leads, you're going to have an active drip of new leads going into this Instantly campaign every single week. And in this example, I just created it weekly. You can make it daily, monthly, multiple times a day. It is up to you. I have this set to 100 records. You can have it set to as many records as you want. If you are in the school premium community and you plan on downloading this, I'm going to show you the one that you will actually import, which is the notes that I was referencing here. I've done my best to add sticky notes to show you where you need to do certain things. I will export the Instantly campaign, so you'll be able to import the Instantly campaign into your account. You'll also be able to click a link here and use this 𝐶hěc tool that I showed you to base64 encode your URLs. And then I will also include the Google Sheets template that I used in this entire tutorial. If you stuck with me this long, kudos to you, because this is a complicated system. I've tried to make it basic, but it's still pretty complex. And some of you guys who are familiar in end-to-end, you're like, yeah, whatever. I make more complex workflows, sure. But for the basic person just starting out, this is pretty tough. And so kudos to you for sticking around. Bookmark this, save it, watch it again later so you can recreate it. I mentioned that this is going to be for the premium community, and the premium community does cost money. However, I do have a free community where actually 99.9% of the stuff I work on, I give away for free. This one just so happens to be for my, I'm going to show you the post here. I asked the premium community, should I give it away? And they said, no. There you go. They said, keep it premium. And so I'm listening to them and I'm keeping this specific one premium. So you'll have to be in there if you want it. But hopefully that was helpful. And if you're new here, thank you for watching this long. Please subscribe, comment down below if you found this valuable. Any links and resources I'll paste down below in the description and in the pinned comments. Have a nice day. Peace.